All right. Welcome, everybody. I believe we are live now. So it's wonderful to have everybody here. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Paolo to the stage. Really wonderful to have you, Paolo. Um,
Thank you
first
for having
time,
me.
first time that we're chatting, and so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And also Blake as well. I'm going to ask you both for a couple of intros, actually. Let's and then talk a little bit about what we're trying to achieve in this conversation today. But just before the intros, I wanted to really welcome everybody to this webinar, where we're going to be talking specifically about USDT, stable coins, and emerging markets. And I thought one thing that would be really nice is just to kind of break down the conversation into three discrete elements. The first one, Paolo, is really just to get to know, Paolo and Tether, the person and the organization. The second is to learn a little bit about the token, Tether the token. And lastly, to learn about Tether in emerging markets and kind of what the use cases are, what the history has been, what the future is going to look like. So we would love to make this a little bit more broad and talk a little bit about human civilization rather than kind of some smaller things that sometimes come up. But we'll talk about that. But first and foremost, Paolo, let everybody hear your beautiful Italian accent. And please introduce yourself a little bit, and then I'll ask Blake to introduce himself as well.
Sure. So I'm first of all, thank you for having me today, and great introduction. So I'm Paolo Ardoino. I'm the CEO at Tether, recently appointed developer, software developer, and technologist all my life. Always enjoyed decentralization and creating mass adoption platforms, and so I'm super excited to be at my current role at Tether.
Beautiful, beautiful. We'll get more into that and Tether in a second. Blake, go ahead.
Thanks, Zom, and great to meet you, Paolo. So my name is Blake. I'm head of growth at VALR. So broadly look after business development, partnerships, international expansion, and all things growth related. Really looking forward to chatting with Paolo. We've been working with USDT for so long, and it's great to see some faces and get into the detail.
Wonderful.
Nice to meet you, Blake.
And for those that don't know, my name is Farzam Ehsani. I'm the co-founder and CEO of VALR. VALR is a crypto exchange in Africa right now, but going global. We started about 6 years ago, and Paolo, this might be also some news for you, but we started 6 years ago with the largest exchange in Africa by trading volume. We'll talk a little bit about that as it relates directly to Tether and kind of the introduction of Tether onto the platform a couple of years ago. And now we're in our next phase of expansion, really expanding to many geographies beyond Africa. So in Asia and Europe and others, we've got licensed in approval to provide services in Europe via Poland and in process in Dubai and Mauritius and South Africa, etc. So lots to talk about, kind of our experience in emerging markets, and then also Paolo, yourself and your history with Tether, and you're also, I think it's important for people to know, the CTO of Bitfinex, a crypto exchange as well. So let's start with the history, Paolo, and tell us a little bit about how you kind of got into this space, how you got associated with Tether, and what I would love for you to take us is a little bit from the history towards kind of your vision for the future, your very large vision. We all have limited number of days on this earthly plane. So what are you trying to achieve? But start a little bit with the history, please.
Well, thank you. So I started coding at 8. When I was 8, I was living in a really small town in Italy, not many people around, not many friends, right? In my classroom, we were like 4 or 5 people, 4 or 5 kids, and after school, there was not much to do, and so one day my father came home with a computer, was 286, and I started trying to understand what I could do with that, and started coding. That was the only thing that made sense to me. In a way, I always felt coding is both a form of art and is one of the most beautiful forms of creativity. So you can express. I was really bad at drawing and do anything really, and but I could finally find a way to express myself through coding to create entire universes, if you will. And so, that grew in me. I went to the university in Genoa in Italy, studied math applied to computer science, and also I have been a big fan of sci-fi throughout all my life, from Asimov and the Cycle of Foundations and iRobot and so many books, but not only Asimov. Everything that is sci-fi, I love it, and I think that I'm mentioning it because it really changed the way I think and I approach things. I like to approach things from the perspective of building technology that is resistant to the wrath of God and apocalypse, rather than building technologies that are, built for the best case scenario. People should start building things that are ready for the worst case scenario, rather than the best case scenario. And so I I made this my personal lesson when you mentioned, I'm the CTO also BitFinex. So when I entered BitFinex in 2014, with the main task of rebuilding the matching engine and the order trading system, I always had that in mind. When more recently I became the first CTO of Tether, but also and then the CEO of Tether, and co-founded another project called Hole Punch that is about peer-to-peer telecommunications. Everything that I do, I try always to apply the same concept: how I can make it resilient, how I can pass this concept of resilience to all our communities and all our users, because that is what I feel Bitcoin was about. And one of the reasons why I really loved Bitcoin, the first time I read the white paper was between 2012 and 2013. And that is the thing that excited me. Okay, how humanity could finally have a form of payment that could be resilient to an apocalypse, that could allow people, that could empower people to be free and to be individual, to achieve individual sovereignty. So that's me, that's my philosophy, and that is the philosophy that I try to apply to Tether. Not only as now people know Tether as for USDT, for the stablecoin, but actually Tether is much more than that now. Recently, we announced our investments with Tether Energy, so building renewable energy solutions also empower Bitcoin miners. We started Bitcoin mining ourselves in different areas around the world with the very same concept, right? So, as I said, resilience and resistance is really important to us. And so we all know that there is high concentration of Bitcoin mining in the US, as before there was a high concentration of Bitcoin mining in China. So with the same philosophy in mind, we started looking at different regions where we could start Bitcoin mining operations to make Bitcoin mining more resilient. And so now we started another project called Tether Education, and we are investing in peer-to-peer based edutech to empower people to learn and have access, a fair access to education, not only about blockchain education, but education broadly in digital. Could be marketing, could be coding, could be AI tools, could be everything that we can think about. And with Hole Punch, we applied the same concept to communications, how we can make sure that people can keep communicating among each other without having to have all their data and their digital private life on centralized servers owned by centralized companies owned by few governments, in a really, that could turn in a really catastrophic way if things can start to go south in the world, right? So unfortunately, we are going towards a really weird world where there are more wars, there are more social unrest. And I think that is our duty as technologists and as believers in decentralization to build things that are following the ethos of resilience and decentralization. Sorry for the long introduction.
Not at all. No, we're here to listen. We're here to thank you for that. Maybe to go straight to kind of the core of a lot of what the ethos of a lot of the people in crypto and Bitcoin. And of course, when you talk about resilient to the wrath of God, you're talking about not Tether, I think, because Tether is not resilient to the wrath of Mr. Paolo Ardoino, because obviously it's a centralized stablecoin. And as you said in many other podcasts, centralized exchanges, centralized stablecoins must abide by the rule of law. And therefore, if there is needs to freeze Tether tokens, etc., that is something that goes through the compliance processes. And so I think this idea of decentralization and centralization, I think there's a lot to be said. I don't want to go too far of course there. But one of the things I did want to ask you about is you're obviously a Bitcoiner. You have a lot of love for Bitcoin. And a lot of people are also getting into Bitcoin because of fears of what's happening in the traditional financial system. With the huge money printing that's there, the huge balance sheet ballooning in the Federal Reserve, we're seeing inflation over the last couple of years. Many people think that even though inflation has started to come down a little bit, it's actually not going to reach there, and we're going to see have other bouts of inflation. So when we talk about stable coins right now, we're obviously talking about tethered to the US dollar at the moment. But I want to ask you about your future vision, because there are many people that say, the days of the US dollar are numbered, right? And if they're numbered, then that means that the stable coins of today will be the unstable coins of the future. So I want to get your reaction to that and what your thoughts are on that statement.
I think it's really interesting. I like this type of a conversation because I think we have to look at it in a really pragmatic way. So if for the people familiar with a bit of history, in the last century, with many decades ago, there was the Weimar Republic, where with a lot of money, you could buy a loaf of bread. Imagine a future where with $1 million US, you could buy only a loaf of bread. Sure, the role of USDT is to remain pegged to the dollar. That if with that dollar you can only buy a fraction of what you could have bought many years before, that is not the business of Tether, right? So the point is stablecoin should remain stable and pegged to a certain currency of choice. I agree with you that there could be, and that's one of the reasons why I like Bitcoin, is that it's hard to understand if Bitcoin is becoming more valuable or is the dollar or the other national currencies are becoming less valuable, right? In a way, it's all relative. And definitely, I think that, if the US dollar will fail, means that the entire world of finance will fail. I can tell you that I have my doubts on the resilience of the euro. So I think that if between the two, it might be the euro that will go sooner rather than the dollar. And not to talk about all the other national currencies. So with this, I'm not defending the US dollar. What I'm saying is that in this moment, the US dollar is probably more resilient than other national currencies. So the role of the US dollar in the reason that the USDT has a lot of success. It's just that the US dollar doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be more beautiful, more resilient, and sustainable than any other fiat currency in the world. Now, if you want something that is, just to use a term that I used before, that is resistant to the wrath of God and is for possibly eternity, that would be Bitcoin, right? If you want the ultimate form of currency that is not printable, right? We know that I was reading that the U.S. government is printing $1 trillion every 100 days. Like, that is kind of crazy. Then, if you want something that has a fixed cap in terms of number of tokens and fixed supply, that is Bitcoin. We see how other blockchains, for example, other tokens can change their monetary supply at will, or at least their development group behind those blockchains and currencies can in fact interact with the monetary supply. We are also seeing that with Ethereum. We changed a few times over the history of Ethereum. That's why I really like Bitcoin. People think, okay, Bitcoin is low and is stagnating. That's a great thing. That is a feature, right? You don't want the ability to change things really quickly and have a small quorum of people to decide what is best for the rest of humanity. You want something that is ossified in a way that makes it really hard to change, because it's really hard for a core group of people, it's really hard for governments, it's really hard for everyone. That is something that people can start relying on for a long term. And the other part, I think that the realization of the potential issues anyway with not only with the US dollar but the global fiat currencies made us, I would say, quite a few years ago now, almost 4 years ago, to start a project called Tether Gold. So Tether Gold, and again, for the people that love history, in the ancient Roman times, it was said, I think it was Cicero said, that with 1 ounce of gold, you could buy a nice vest and a nice pair of shoes. Now, 1 ounce of gold today costs around $2,000. And with $2,000, you can buy a nice suit and a nice pair of shoes. But also, when the Fed was born, I think it was 1913 or something like that.
That's right. It's 1913.
There was, December was, at that time, with the 1 ounce of gold, you could, I think the ratio between 1 ounce of gold and oil was 27-1. If you look at today, the gold, 1 ounce of gold and a barrel of oil is still 27-1, right? So it shows how gold, and show why gold has been used throughout all the financial resets of the human history for the last 5,000 years, because has the same value of Bitcoin, is scarce unless an asteroid full of gold lands on the Earth. It will remain scarce, right? So it's being said that majority of the gold has been extracted already from the Earth, apart the ones that is deep in the oceans. And so with Tether Gold, we wanted to create something that is, I think, a bit better than a dollar stablecoin. So it's still centralized, because Tether Gold has 100% of the issued tokens are backed by physical gold held in Switzerland, in Swiss vaults. Is a bit better than a dollar stablecoin, because it doesn't have the problem of money printing. So it's linked to a natural commodity that has been, as I said, used throughout human history as a form of payment. So that's how I think people, and I ran out the size of, to give you just an idea, we launched, before Tether Gold, we launched first USDT, then we launched Euro Tether. You know how big is Euro Tether? Is 50 million euros. So, and Tether Gold that was launched after Euro Tether is 500 million. So the reality is that if you go outside of Europe, for example, no one really wants the euro. Probably not even Europeans want the euro. And so the who doesn't have a strong currency wants the dollar. But if you have the dollar, or if you want something that is more resilient than the dollar and that could be more sustainable in the future and put you at ease in case of the US economy keeps printing a lot of dollars, then you should use gold. And Tether Gold is a great proxy to that. If you want something that is, unconfiscatable, and that is extremely, extremely resilient to whatever will happen, then use Bitcoin.
So maybe just for our listeners and viewers, so that's a very interesting stat. So $50 million in market cap for Euro Tether, $500 million for a market cap of gold Tether or Tether Gold. And then right now we were sitting at over 100 billion US dollars for USDT. So I think it's about 103 right now. And before we start moving into kind of talking about the emerging markets, one of the things that when I asked people on Twitter, like what to ask you, people are still asking, obviously, about the backing and of Tether. There's obviously much more information now than there was a few years ago. And I know that recently there's about over 5 billion in excess reserves now from Tether, and the secured loans are not part of the 100%, but it's actually part of the 5% now. So maybe just because that is on people's mind, and I think I'm looking forward to the day that kind of a lot of that FUD is behind us and we move forward. But I think there are still a couple of questions about that. Do you want to just mention anything beyond what I've mentioned, which is there are attestation reports on the website, on Tether's website, that's actually broken down quite a lot in the transparency page. But is there anything that you'd like to tell the listeners and the viewers?
Well, you touch base. So first of all, I want to say that Tether as a team grew up a lot in the past years. So Tether in the past has been considered by few people in our industry and outside like the black sheep of crypto. And I want to be really open about it. I think, if you were in a room full of crypto people in 2020, you could hear whispering, all looking at Tether like the black sheep, right? Oh, well, these guys, this bunch of Italian guys who knows them, and they are clearly, they are going down. You fast forward in 2024, right? In that room, you hear silence because almost all the mighty heroes of crypto, they are all disappeared, all gone. So it tells a lot about the perception of the market, right? And it tells a lot about what Tether did wrong. So we have been always humble people, simple people. We still are, and I will also argument that later. But we until 2022, we were thinking, I come from a family that is they had farms, right? So I always think, and I always thought, if we keep our head down, we work hard, we sweat a lot, people will understand, will love us, and will see what we are doing. And that's, the thing is that Tether never had a marketing team before 2022, right? And was born in 2014, because we thought that the good we were doing and the greatness of the product that we built was good enough, right? So that, and was a really naive way from us to was really naive. We should have thought to be immediately more open, more communicative. That's something that I regret, but I think as you said, now there's so much more information out there that is available. And we started doing attestations with BDO, that is the top 5 auditing firm in the world. And also we did something that, if you look in many other companies, both in crypto, but especially outside of crypto, Tether became extremely profitable. For different reasons, because we grew the market cap a lot, but also because interest rates on T-bills went up really a lot. It's around 5% now per year. And so that allowed us to create a discussion, this buffer on top of the 100% reserves that cover all the tokens. We have now 5.2 billion at the last attestation, 31st December 2023. We had 5.2 billion in additional equity. Now, those are profits, right? So those are profits of the company that the vast majority of the companies would have happily shared across the shareholders, so that the shareholders could buy more villas and more, watches. I have a simple smartwatch, and or spending in yachts or whatever. We kept the vast majority of our assets and our profits within the stablecoin to create, to give a different perception of finance. We know how the banking world. If you run a bank, you can lend out more than 90% of your balance sheet, right? So that's why no bank, or almost no bank in the world, can sustain a bank run that is bigger than 10%. We have seen that in 2008 with Washington Mutual. We have seen it with Silicon Valley Bank, and so on and so forth.
Correct.
Last year, in 2023, many banks failed, and many banks that were banking also our competitors failed. And so we thought that the best way, the actual most important innovation of USDT is the full reserve system that we have. And on top of that, we keep 5% that were profits that could have been distributed, but yet they weren't for the vast majority. So that the stablecoin and people that use our stablecoin, because we really do care about, we know that if we have an issue with the USDT is being used by 300 million people around the world. So for us, would be a betrayal of these people that they are not for most of it, not rich people. They are living in emerging markets and developing countries, and they need our product. That's why we really do care about the stability of USDT.
Awesome.
Paolo, quick question on this, because I know you spoke a lot about resilience, and I think it's Tether is probably the most resilient company in crypto if you just think about what you went through, particularly in 2022, in terms of the stablecoin redemptions during the Terra Luna cycle and everyone fleeing counterparties. I think I listened to an episode on Bankless not so long ago, and it was something like $20 billion you had to redeem in something like 20 days. That's taken down big banks in the US very recently, right? Even smaller sums than that. So I think resilience is clearly something that Tether's got, and there's been a lot of, I think, as Farzam alluded to, a lot of FUD and a lot of I guess fear mongering around the centralization of the crypto markets around Tether, and particularly as a exchange quote currency, as a collateral currency. And I think there's a lot of folks that are scared, maybe in the same way that we're scared of the dollar failing, that what happens if something happens to USDT, and what happens to the market when that happens. So how do you think about that sort of systemic risk element that Tether presents with the market cap that it's now got? In your mind, what happens in the crypto markets if something happens to Tether?
So yeah, you mentioned an event or a series event, right? So
yeah.
The 20 billion in redemption, so after the Terra Luna event, what happened, and that is public information, there were hedge funds, and most recently also I was reading that DCG Group, and well, in an email stated that they were shorting 400 million USDT, but they were just one of the many that in 2022, after Terra Luna, shorted very, very publicly, also writing on newspapers, USDT. So why they did that, right? So in 2022, billions and billions of USDT were sold on secondary markets below the US dollar, below $1. The reason for that was clearly to create a bank run. As I said, no bank in the world resisted to more than a 10% bank run. So they wanted to create enough pressure. So if you sell USDT below $1 on exchange, what happens is that a market maker will buy the cheap USDT, get the cheap USDT, bring the cheap USDT to USDT, to Tether, to the issuer, redeem it for $1. All the redemptions at Tether are for the nominal value, so the $1. So they redeem it for $1. They bring back the dollar on the exchange, and so on and so forth. So they keep redeeming. So they keep putting pressure on our shares and our banking. So they thought there is no way that this bunch of guys have anywhere near 10% of the reserves. So in 48 hours, so 2 days, we redeemed $7 billion. That was basically 10% of our reserves. So that was really interesting. I mean, of course, after the fact insights, right, is one of the most interesting things and the cool things that I experienced, because of course in the moment you are super stressed, you have to process, there is a lot of FUD, you have customers that want to redeem, you have to process as fast as possible redemptions. We were able to pay out $7 billion in 48 hours. In 20 days was in 20 something days was more than $20 billion and 25% of our reserves. So, and we could have kept going. So this showed to all the Tether shorters that that we sustained an attack on our reserves and our company that no bank in the world, or almost no bank in known world, was able to sustain. So that is a trial by fire that I'm confident, especially now if you see our latest attestations. We have in our latest attestation, we show that we had 80.3 billion in US Treasury bills alone. So that would put us, if I'm not wrong, just behind Germany in how much US debt we have. And the CEO, so, and I can say this because it became public, and the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, Howard Lutnick, went publicly, was in Davos this year, early 2024, saying 4 words: they have the money. So Cantor is a primary dealer with the Fed, directly with the Fed. There are 24 in the world, and they have a direct connection, and they have been comfortable enough. They did a lot of due diligence, really, really a lot due diligence for 2 years before accepting us as a customer. And they got comfortable enough that the CEO said they have the money. So this is how I feel confident that we have 5.2 billion more than the reserves. We were able to sustain what any bank, no bank in the world, was able to sustain. We have a major institution to support us and backing us. So,
Paolo, let me ask you this, because people that are not so familiar, they'll say, "Well, wait a minute, Paolo, you guys have US dollars that are backing the tethers, and so you obviously have a bank account. So if you're drawing on the bank account, then you're drawing more than 10% of potentially their balance sheet or their liquidity, and so that could crash the bank that you guys are banking with when you're trying to pull that money out." But I understand that one of the main reasons that you guys hold securities and T-bills is because then that's not being lent out, right? That's your own, basically in your name, that cannot be lent out unless you provide permission to that. So I wanted to ask you, A, just to confirm that, and then B, maybe you can share a little bit more detail. And I think some of the listeners, at least I haven't heard some of those details, is that when you guys had the kind of run on Tether, so to speak, where people were redeeming. It's not really a run, because I don't like that term, because you're not a bank, right? But when there was a lot of redemptions, were you guys going into the market and selling your treasuries, and were you guys taking losses because of that? Like, what was that looking like in the background? Because I mean, we can say, okay, you redeemed it, but practically, what was going on in the background, and also how were you feeling, and what were the stresses like during that period for you?
So, okay, there is a lot to unpack there. So first of all, you are right that the reason to hold T-bills is because you want to make sure that you shouldn't necessarily trust the bank. Well, if you leave cash in the bank, that goes in their balance sheet, and that's a big issue, because if it goes in the bank balance sheet and the bank goes bankrupt, then you have to go through the bankruptcy process in order to get what is remaining of your assets. If you have securities like US T-bills, then it's different. So they will be returned to you. I think that was the mistake that almost killed our main competitor in 2023. They had 3.3 billion in Silicon Valley Bank in cash. The issue with cash is that, so they got lucky, because the FDIC, that usually insures up to $250,000 per account, decided to step in and save completely Silicon Valley Bank. but otherwise would have been a gigantic mess, because the first thing is that you should not leave cash in the bank, should be always invested in a way that, of course, in a safe, liquid way, like US Treasury bills, so that you can always get your securities back. Now, when we had to redeem $7 billion to $20 billion, so the approach that we have in investing is investing in really short-term securities, so those can be always sell. There is a really high liquidity market. So if you look at the US Treasury bills, 3 months, so we have the average is of our maturity of our T-bills is lower than 3 months. So there is a huge market on a daily basis that you can access to sell those T-bills. And plus, nowadays we have what is called overnight reverse repos that allows you to be able to access liquidity in the tens of billions of dollars through, again, Cantor Fitzgerald, in order to draw that liquidity and process redemptions, and so not to have to rush even to rush to sell T-bills in the market. So we are really comfortable with the approach that we have in enormous liquidity access overnight.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I'd like to change tack a little bit and start heading into kind of the emerging market discussion. I want to bring Blake in here, and Paolo, I think it would be insightful for you as well, just to hear a little bit about kind of what's happening with VALR and USDT, etc. What I will share at the beginning is, and I'm glad what you shared about kind of, you said you didn't really do any public relations or anything pre-2022, which is one of the main reasons that there wasn't any kind of, reports or publications about or attestations about reserves. And, we've at VALR been in business for 6 years now. And initially, and you mentioned your main competitor, which is USDC, which is Circle. And that was initially the stable coin that we had on our platform. And this is pre-2022. There was some discussions about what's going on. And one of the questions that I had is that if these guys are backed, why don't they just put a statement out there that they're backed? Like, I don't understand. And so we were actually cautious at that time. And then obviously later on, we listed USDT, and USDT is by far the most highly traded quote pair on our platform. And I think that's a story that's definitely true in the Asian exchanges and other exchanges globally. But I wanted to bring Blake in to just share, as head of growth, he also deals with a lot of our big customers, a lot of our retail customers. He sees what's going on. So Blake, maybe share some of your insights as well with USDT that maybe Paolo, and the challenge to you is maybe some of the things that Paolo won't know and our listeners won't know. And then we'll also talk a little bit about some stuff that's happening in other emerging markets.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Farzam. So certainly from the time that we introduced Tether onto the platform a couple of years ago, it's really exploded now. And if I think about across our OTC operations, across the exchange, there's now almost more value being exchanged in Tether as Bitcoin, so against local currency here in South Africa. And for context, occasionally we're doing $20 million a day on Bitcoin, and often the Tether component, so ZAR to Tether, is more than that across all of our channels combined. So it's really exploded, and has definitely become the predominant, I would say, store of value and means of exchange outside of purely using the banking rails in the country. And it's been very interesting to see the type of customers that have emerged as the participants in this market. And it's the type of customers that you don't really expect, and you maybe don't get in the States or in Europe, where you're looking at hedge funds and market makers and so on. On our USDT ZAR book, for instance, the largest traders there are not market makers. They're actually organic buyers and organic sellers. And the reason they're able to sort of make a price so tight is that they have a specific need to use that Tether for some sort of utility. And typically, we're seeing folks who are buying it for their treasury. So this is corporate customers. We have over 1,000 corporate customers that are buying USDT as a means to hedge themselves against local currency devaluation, as a means to hedge against supplier invoices that they've got to pay in a couple of months' time, and they're sitting on Rand as local currency. And then we also get folks who are looking to settle their suppliers. There's been a massive increase, particularly in the East, of suppliers being requested to pay in USDT. And likewise, the importers need to acquire that USDT to settle those invoices. And that's been an amazing observation and the type of participants that have joined the market. So that's been incredibly interesting. But I think one of the biggest requests that we've got, particularly in the African markets, is for USDT on Tron. And I think it's an interesting story, Paolo, about how Tether was the first to sort of support the alternative network, and how Tron was, especially pre-heavy gas days, how that's really stuck in Africa. It's certainly the most requested feature in the last while for VALR. And a lot of the funds we do see are moving towards Eastern exchanges and so on. And I think there's a story to be told, not only about there's a huge adoption here, but I think there's a much bigger adoption in the East. And I'd also love to hear your story about what's going on in Asia with Tether, because it's while it's popular here, I think it's exceedingly popular there. And yeah, I would love to hear more about that.
Well, thank you first of all for sharing the stats and your insights, Blake. See, I think what you are describing is the rightful evolution of crypto, right? So started from a bit of speculation, I must say, but then now is permeating people's lives, and I think is what crypto and Tether USDT are set to do. What you have been describing is a change of needs, or a discover new needs and new ways of using stable coins in different industries. So of course, stable coins and Tether created the stablecoin industry in 2014, and the reason was cryptocurrency arbitrage. Simple as that, right? So I would like to be able to claim that we already envisioned back then all the potential disruption of USDT, but actually no. It was a simple use case, crypto arbitrage. But in 2019, 2020, with the pandemic and the effect that pandemic and many other things that has started to have in global finance, right? So with national currencies, really quickly devaluating against the dollar, we are seeing that in Argentina and Turkey, and many other countries. Then we started seeing USDT being used as a store of value, because it was the easiest proxy to the dollar, right? So if you live in Argentina, you know the dollar, historically that the dollar has always outperformed by orders of magnitude your local currency. And the issue is that you have two options in Argentina: either you use the black market in the streets, and that you get charged enormous fees to convert your Argentine pesos in dollars, or you use a bank. But if you use a bank, you can only convert $200 per month from Argentine pesos, so you are heavily limited. And in the case of default, and Argentina had very few defaults, your dollars in a bank account will be taken. So Argentinians are sick and tired to be exploited for the bad management of finances and that the government had in the past years, in the past decades. So they decided to use an alternative that they could keep in their wallet, in their phone, that is USDT. And that is a common story in Turkey and many, many other countries. Now, and so that is the second evolution, like for Akira Toriyama, who was died unfortunately in the last days, but for the fans of Goku, is like the freezer, the enemy of Goku changed different forms, right? So who knows what will be the ultimate form of Tether USDT, but USDT changed form multiple times and changed its primary market multiple times. And so the last evolution that we are seeing, the last form of usage of USDT that we're seeing heavily growing now is basically what you described. That is the trade finance. So people are starting to do global commerce, not buying, a couple of hoodies here and there, but actually sending, buying cotton or buying, whatever, like primary matters from Asia to Asia, sending to Asia and so on, from Africa in USDT. That is, and the Middle East is the very same thing. USDT is becoming the settlement currency for trade finance trading. So for commodities trading. And that I think is extremely exciting because it's a way to expedite the, the settlement of trades that before it took, ages, days or weeks or months even. So that is, you see that when you create something useful, you might not know all how it will be used in the future, but people will find the best way to use it properly and in a safe way.
Actually, we have someone on the who's watching, Rosella Lopez, and he messaged me when he heard that we were doing this this webinar, and he's based in South America and within South Africa as well. And he said, let me give you an example of what's happening with USDT. He said, just yesterday, 10,000 transactions, over 10,000 transactions of Argentinians using USDT via SwapX in Brazil, and over 700 transactions in Brazil. Sorry, that's in Argentina, and then 700 transactions in Brazil. So tens of thousands using just one channel, effectively, with using USDT as the token, which is wonderful to hear, because I think, Paolo, I've listened to a few of the things that you've talked about, and also at VALR, I think we share some similar values in the sense that we are trying to promote civilization. We are trying to make the world a better place. The financial system is lamentably defective in many ways. The world and humanity deserve better than what they currently have. And that's what we're trying to do, and trying to kind of bring this new paradigm in place. And to your point, I think what we can do is we build. You build and you put the products out there, and you see what happens, and they do morph according to demand, etc. One of the things we wanted to make a little bit of an announcement with you on the show also, Paolo, is, and I'm going to put I'll ask Blake to talk a little bit about that, because we are, given that Tether has really taken off in a big way on VALR, and it's obviously that's representative of its position globally as the dominant stablecoin. We've got a pretty big announcement to make. So Blake, why don't you also share that?
Yeah, Paolo. I mean, I think it's super interesting how Tether was created to start, to allow for the arbitrage for dollars and crypto to move at the same speed, and it's certainly become a massive market infrastructure in itself. It allows crypto exchanges to operate without bank accounts, which are for custody, which are very hard to come by, and very few exchanges manage to get dollar custody accounts. And as a result, Tether has become widespread, right? Most prices are quoted in Tether. It's much easier to understand at the moment versus a Bitcoin price like it used to be in 2015 and 2016. And as a result, Tether obviously has emerged as the leading quote price. We've leaned heavily into USDT lately, and in fact, we're about to launch a very big futures trading incentive program. And on VALR, we're choosing to list, at least for the next while, our futures all against Tether. For this reason, it's widely accepted.
That's great.
Yeah, so more coming to VALR near you. And part of this program is really to try and take VALR to the world, and we really want to share in the success of VALR's futures trading and the derivatives market on VALR, by sharing in the trading fees that are earned in that market with the top traders in the market. So what we'll be doing is releasing a prize pool, which is up to $60 million over a period of 12 months in USDT prizes, and those prizes will be paid out to the traders that are contributing towards the liquidity on that exchange, whether they're market making or taking. We're going to be sharing in the success with those traders. So we really want to let anybody know that if they're coming to VALR to trade, that they're going to be able to share in our growth, and really want you to come on that journey. And Paolo, we do have a question for you though. We're putting up to 60 million on the line in USDT, and I think Farzam's got a question to ask, so I'll hand over to him there.
So Paolo, we're putting in $60 million for this trading competition as a crypto prize pool. How much are you putting in?
I'm a cheap guy. I only talk.
Let's see the watch. You said
stingy.
Let's see the watch. It's the proof. Let's see the watch.
What about the $2,000?
The watch is just an upgrade over Casio. It's a Garmin watch.
No, we're very, very excited about this training competition, and also wanted to share it with you on the show because it's testament to kind of what you and your team have built. It's kind of the de facto measurement of value right now. And I did want to bring one other big concern, and I think I wanted to just raise it here as well so that more and more people hear about this. I think many of us have heard about the 2 Binance executives that have been detained in Nigeria because of the troubles there. I just learned yesterday, actually, that one of those individuals I actually know personally. I didn't know that it was him. And so he's obviously being detained. He's against his will. And one of the things that, unfortunately, the Nigerian government has said, take away your pros and cons about Binance. But one of the things that the Nigerian government has said is that Binance was basically allowing the people to kind of debase the Nigerian naira, the currency. And I wanted to make it very clear that, exchanges like VALR, like Binance, like Bitfinex, do not determine the value of currencies, right? We act as litmus tests and let the traders tell what the true value is. And so, banning crypto exchanges in Nigeria is akin to banning thermometers because taking the temperature makes the patient sick. It's the wrong way and convoluted way of thinking about things, right? So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of everybody. See also, Paolo, if you have any thoughts on that situation or any insight there, because I think we as a crypto community are going to be up against a lot of things that just don't make sense, that are against what truth is, to make the world a better place, because we will be up against vested interests. So in that light, I wanted to ask you, one of my last questions is kind of any thoughts on that, but more generally, how do you navigate some of the regulatory challenges that are often instigated by the vested interest players that are benefiting from the status quo right now, that could be a threat to companies like Tether?
So thank you for bringing the Nigerian case up, because I think is quite worrisome, but also show that the governments should pay a bit more attention to actually why people use cryptocurrencies. So first of all, I completely agree with you. Exchanges are a price discovery tool. So the exchange is not deciding price, is not taking positions. The exchanges just allow people to exchange. So they are super partes, as Latins were saying. So they don't hold any responsibility in the price discovery. Now, it's also true that I think historically, the more you try to ban something, the more people will find alternative ways to have access to it. So the risk is that the government, with their actions, are just pushing people to find more unsafe ways to do the same thing. They could be pushing like side markets to be more prominent, and the physical markets in the streets are also dangerous. So they put people in danger, but people will keep trying to find a safe way to or a way to access other currencies, for the very same reason that it's not normal people's fault if a national currency is going down the bin. It is bad financial politics that are causing that. And so if you hire a person in a country that has that issue where the national currency is going down the bin, it means that you work the entire year, you work hard, and at the end of the year, you are poorer compared to the beginning of the year because you are saving your money in the national currency. Because you are poorer because everything you buy is probably imported from the outside. Every single thing will be imported. Well, almost everything is imported. And so means that you will, every year, you will be able to afford less and less. So of course, people will always find a way to protect themselves and their families, right? It's not only that. You want to give an education to your children. You need to be able to pay and provide for your family. So people will always try, will find ways to do that. The government isn't just making it more dangerous. That's kind of sad, in my opinion. Is one point that I wanted to make, because is not unfortunately not everyone is realizing this. So we, as of Bitfinex and Tether, we deal with regulators all around the world, and I must say that we are seeing some regulators that are more open, right? For example, El Salvador is a great example. We are seeing El Salvador becoming one great country in Central America, and leading also South America in showing how with security, with openness to new technologies, you can actually change the future of your population. You can attract investments. You can attract interest. Of course, it's important to make the country secure and to remove and reduce corruption, right? You know, I'm Italian, so I know that how much a country can be corrupted. But the reality is that the world is going to lean towards the countries that are more open. There, people and communities and investors will be rewarded the countries that are able to remove corruption, that are increasing security, and are embracing new technologies. And so there will be a huge competition in next years. And the countries that will try with all their forces to create blocks for people to access free markets, they might find it backfiring in anytime soon.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to start wrapping up soon. One of the questions that came up is a little bit like, so post the issues that we had, as you said, Circle had with their banks, etc. Obviously, you guys have your own banking partners. So there was, and actually it happened to us as well. We had USD deposits and withdrawals that could be redeemed for USDC at the time. And those rails actually went away during that entire banking crisis. And I think the crypto community globally had a lot of difficulty with the on and off ramps with fiat currency. So I wanted to just understand your assessment of the risks for that happening, particularly, as you know, and it's been public, your competitors have also, let me say, said some things about Tether in Congress and things like that. So what is the threat that you see? Does that concern you? And what is the threat to the system? And this is another way of basically also asking, like, even if the US government doesn't like Tether, decides Tether is too much of a threat, and tells all the US banks that are banking you to stop banking you, what are your thoughts about that? And are there any mitigations to that?
So I think that one big innovation that Tether made is the concept of, as I said, fully reserved system. Then the second other one is the fact that if you think about it, USDT is the best ally for the US dollar. The US always trying to push the US dollar as the currency for the world. But before, they never had people, or if you look at recent history, you have China 34 years ago had $2 trillion of US debt. Now they have between 700 and 800 billion they have been selling. Many countries started to sell. Yeah. In this moment, Tether holds 10% of what China holds in terms of US debt. So I believe that we should be seen as in a positive light from the US government. We are doing a simple business that is creating tokens that are fully backed, and for the first time in history, every time someone is buying a USDT, maybe a person in Argentina is holding USDT, we are taking the dollars and buy the US debt. So I think, we are doing, a great service, in my opinion. And look, I cannot control is, I think if you also were reading the comments on Twitter after our competitors went in Congress and spreading lies, it's simply unfortunately sad, right? It speaks a lot about companies not being able to compete with products. They are just trying to do it with lies. We don't mind. I mean, we believe that it's normal for people that are trying to steal our market cap. Not steal is not the right word, but trying to have a shot at our market cap to use every measure they can to do it. It's just sad that for a company that should have a higher stature, they're resorting to these petty ways. But we are fine. We are okay. We mind to our own business. We mind to our community. We believe that, kind of believe in karma. Look, I will still believe I'm still a son of a farmer and simple people. I believe that if you do a good job, work hard, you will be rewarded.
Paolo, maybe on that note, I think, if we ask Jeremy Allaire, they'll probably say that they weren't lying. So I want to ask you, would you be open to having a conversation if we facilitate it between yourself, Jeremy, bring you guys together, have an open conversation? Is that something that you would be open to or not?
I'm always open. I think the world is all about transparency.
Wonderful. I think on that note, we'll leave it there. I wanted to thank you, Paolo, very, very much for joining us, spending your valuable time with us. Blake, thank you for your contributions. Most importantly, thanks to all the listeners and the viewers. We're going to have this more often, and hopefully, Paolo, we have you back soon to just share a little bit more of how this progresses, how that transforms. But I think to leave everybody with saying that everybody in our ecosystem, really, my greatest hope is that we are doing this to change the world for the better. There's a lot of injustice in the world. There's a lot of people that deserve much, much better. Thank you, Paolo, for all your efforts to trying to transform that. We're doing our part to do that. It's going to require a lot of businesses, a lot of people to have the mindset of bringing about justice in the world. That's what we're trying to aspire towards doing. And I want to leave everybody with that note so that we can try to make the world a little bit of a better place day at a time. So thank you, Paolo.
Thank you, Farzam. Thank you, Blake.
Thanks, everybody.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone, for dialing in.